They didn't leave you because you weren't enough. They left because they weren't allowed to stay. Listen when divine protection is activated on your life. The people who can't walk in your frequency will vanish without warning. You thought you were losing friends, but you were gaining clarity. This isn't loneliness. This is a spiritual quarantine. You're not being punished. You're being protected because what's inside you is too sacred to be touched by the wrong hands. The life of the chosen one, a sacred silence, not caused by rejection, but by divine selection. It feels like people disappear. Friends you once laughed with no longer call, the invites stop, the group chats go quiet, and for a while, it hurts you. Question yourself, did I change? Yes, you did. You evolved, and when a chosen one evolves, the illusions of connection begin to fade. This is not about pride or ego. This is heaven's strategy. Your destiny is not tied to the crowd. It's protected by solitude, the absence of friends. In your life right now is not an accident. It's a firewall. You are surrounded by divine code, a protective algorithm that ejects anything unclean from your space the moment you were called. Heaven activated security clearance over your soul, and it starts subtly. You outgrow conversations. You stop laughing at the same old jokes. Your spirit begins rejecting environments that once felt familiar. You're not being antisocial. Your spirit is entering lockdown mode when a chosen one is about to step into purpose. The fake friendships start glitching. People start showing their true colors. Why? Because divine light forces masks to fall, and what's revealed is what God never intended to follow you into the next chapter. Your path is narrow, not because you're unworthy of connection. It's narrow because your calling is heavy. It cannot be shared with just anyone. You're not friendless. You're filtered. God doesn't allow just anyone near his anointed. And you, chosen one, you carry oil, spiritual oil, the kind of power that attracts both angels and enemies, which is exactly why divine protection is so intense. People don't ghost you for no reason. The Spirit of God is your firewall. When someone's heart is impure toward you, he makes sure it never lasts. You ever notice how they just fade away? No fight, no closure, no big argument. 1 minute you're close, the next they're gone. That's not coincidence. That's clearance denied by the divine. You are not abandoned. You are being hidden. God hides what he's preparing, just like a seed in the dark, just like a masterpiece behind the curtain. If you had the crowd, you'd mistake noise for alignment. If you had the fake support, you'd confuse comfort with destiny. But God allowed silence, so you could finally hear his voice above theirs. Your uniqueness isn't just in your ability, it's in your sensitivity. Chosen ones walk with a deep spiritual radar. You feel everything. You sense when something's off. You notice the fake smiles before they fade. You catch the passive-aggressive shade in their tone. That's not paranoia. That's spiritual discernment sharpening you. And when your discernment gets too sharp, people get uncomfortable. They can't pretend around you anymore. They can't hide behind masks because your very presence exposes what they tried to bury. They say, "You've changed." And they're right. You've grown. You've elevated. You're not who you used to be. But here's the part they don't say. They never planned to grow with you. Some people were only sent to walk with you to a certain season. They were assignments, destiny partners. when their time expired. Your spirit could no longer connect with theirs. Don't chase what God has released. Don't grieve what's no longer in alignment. You've been set apart, and that's not rejection. That's redirection. There are rooms you were never meant to fit in. There are circles you were never supposed to blend into because you weren't made to fit in. You were crafted to stand apart. Even your silence is powerful. Even your presence makes spirits uncomfortable, not because you're arrogant, but because the anointing is undeniable. God is making room by removing distractions. Some friends weren't friends at all. They were distractions in disguise, agents of delay, carriers of spiritual parasites, jealous but pretending, smiling while secretly wishing you'd fail. And God, in His mercy, did what you were too loyal to do. He cut the cord. You feel lonely, but you're not alone. There's a big difference. Loneliness is a feeling. Being alone is a setup, a divine appointment for purification. This is the place where God clears your line, so when He speaks you'll hear Him clearly, without interference, because what's coming next requires your full attention. No distractions, no fake companions, no Judas hiding in the crew. This isn't punishment, it's preparation. Before David became king, he was in the field. Before Joseph sat on the throne, he was in the pit, then the prison. Before Jesus stepped into public ministry, he spent 40 days in solitude. Alone does not mean abandoned. It means anointed. So if you're in that season right now, where you look around and see no one clapping for you, no one checking on you, no one standing beside you, don't panic, smile, because you're not being isolated. You're being insulated by divine protection. To be continued. The reason your phone is dry, the reason nobody reaches out, is not because you're forgotten. It's because you're being preserved. The calling on your life is so sacred, so serious, that heaven won't allow contamination. Some people can't come close, not because you rejected them, but because the spirit around you blocked them. The closer you get to purpose, the tighter your circle becomes, until sometimes it disappears completely. You're not being antisocial. You're not pushing people away. You're just glowing too bright for the blind. Your light exposes, and not everyone is ready to face their own shadows. So they distance themselves, they leave, or they turn cold without explanation. That's not a loss, that's divine editing. God is cutting the background noise because He wants you to hear one thing: instructions. Chosen ones don't walk ordinary paths. Your path requires clarity. It requires obedience. And it requires silence around you so the right voice can speak through you. When too many voices have access, confusion begins. But when divine protection activates, the access shuts down. You become harder to reach, not because you're hiding, but because God has lifted you above the reach of distractions. There's a weight to this walk, a pressure, a process. Everyone wants the glory of being chosen, but no one talks about the grief that comes with it. You grieve friendships that didn't survive the elevation. You grieve connections that once felt unbreakable. You grieve the version of yourself that didn't need to be this strong. But guess what? That grief was part of your birthright. The moment you accepted your calling, you unknowingly signed a spiritual contract, one that says you will be protected at all costs. That cost: isolation, misunderstanding, being overlooked, being misread, because chosen ones are often too real for a fake world. you don't fit the mold. You don't play the game. You don't fake smiles to keep peace. And the truth is, people don't know how to handle that kind of authenticity. So instead of facing you, they flee. Instead of respecting you, they whisper about you. But it's not personal. It's prophetic. The weight you carry shifts atmospheres. It unsettles dark spirits in other people. They won't tell you to your face, but your presence convicts them. They can't be fake around you anymore. And rather than deal with their own darkness, they choose distance. That's not rejection. That's revelation. What they couldn't say in words, God showed you in their silence. You used to wonder why you never fit in. Even when you tried, something always felt off. The laughter felt forced. The energy didn't match. You could be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. That's not depression. That's divine distinction. You were never meant to blend. You were created to pierce, to stand out, to disturb patterns, and to break generational cycles. You see things others miss. You feel things before they happen. You catch lies wrapped in smiles. You discern motives before they speak. That's not paranoia. That's your spiritual gift. And because of it, you can't be around just anybody. Because what others miss casually, you absorb spiritually. God made you a mirror, and some people hate the reflection. You force them to see. But here's the truth. If you had stayed in those friendships, if you had kept entertaining those connections, they would have killed your gift. Not physically, but spiritually. They would have diluted your power, compromised your calling, talked you into shrinking to make them comfortable. That's why God removed them. Not to hurt you, but to heal you from what you were too loyal to release. Loyalty is beautiful, but when misplaced, it becomes a chain. And some of the people you missed were never your tribe. They were your test. God was testing whether you'd hold on to comfort or surrender to purpose. And by letting them go, you passed. Now you're in the in-between, that lonely space between no longer and not yet, where everything feels unfamiliar, where you don't quite know who's for you, but you know who can't walk with you. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also the birthing room of destiny. In this place, you don't need a crowd. You don't need validation. You need alignment. Every step you take from here must be intentional. No more energy leaks. No more forcing connections. No more trauma bonds disguised as friendships. The old season is closed, and your new one doesn't need carry-ons. Only covenant connections get clearance. You're not arrogant, you're aware. And awareness creates boundaries. Boundaries protect your purpose, because without them, you'll bleed for people who would never bandage you. You'll give to people who only take people, who celebrate your overflow but disappear when you're empty. That's over now. You've matured. You've seen enough. You've lost enough. And now, finally, you've learned the lesson. You don't need many, just the right ones. The ones who don't compete. The ones who cover you. The ones who pray for you in rooms you're not in. The ones who don't get jealous when God blesses you but shout louder than you do. Those are the ones. Heaven will align when it's time, but not before you've been purified, not before you've mastered solitude, not before you've embraced divine separation, because God will never let the counterfeit stand beside the chosen. Not in this season, not with what He's getting ready to release in you. You are a weapon in the Spirit. Your words break strongholds. Your presence disrupts darkness. Your mind receives downloads, and your heart It carries heaven's frequency. So yes, the separation was necessary because the wrong people would have tried to profit from your power. They would have tried to manipulate your mission, use your name for clout, claim your oil, but never carry the cost. But God shut it down. He closed doors you begged to keep open. He let them walk away when all you wanted was peace. He allowed the betrayal, the confusion, the silence because you needed to see who was real before the spotlight hit. Elevation without separation is dangerous. That's why He pulled you back, not to punish you, but to protect the promise, because what's coming for you isn't regular. It's divine. It's sacred. And it's only for those with clean hands and pure hearts. You've been faithful through the fire. You've walked alone. You've cried behind closed doors, and still you kept going. Still you didn't fold. Still you said yes to the assignment. Now heaven is saying yes to you. Get ready, because everything they thought disqualified you was actually proof that you're chosen. The silence, the rejection, the fake love, the long nights where you cried and asked God with those weren't signs of abandonment. They were signs that heaven was too involved in your story to let it be written by people who didn't carry divine ink. You kept wondering why you couldn't just blend in, why you couldn't maintain normal friendships like everyone else. It's because there's nothing normal about you. You were never called to fit in with the world. You were called to interrupt it, to challenge it, to shift atmospheres just by walking in the room. That kind of calling doesn't come with crowds. It comes with isolation, with process, with pain. Chosen ones don't attract popularity. They attract warfare. They attract spiritual attacks disguised as friendships. They attract people who come smiling but carry hidden daggers. That's why you had to learn discernment in the quiet. That's why you had to be alone long enough to hear the difference between a compliment and a curse wrapped in charm. You had to grow ears for the Spirit. God wasn't keeping you alone because He was punishing you. He was teaching you how to see in the dark, because the next season won't be about who claps the loudest. It'll be about who's spiritually clean enough to stand beside you without contaminating your flow. You see, being chosen means you're on assignment. But before you can carry out that mission, heaven has to detox your surroundings. Not everyone has the heart for warfare. Not everyone has the discipline to walk beside destiny. So God emptied your life of the wrong ones, not to leave you lonely, but to make room for those who can go the full distance with you. That's why you stopped getting invites. That's why the phone stopped ringing. That's why they unfriended and moved funny. You didn't do anything wrong. You just became too real to sit at tables built on masks and ego. You leveled up spiritually, and your presence became a threat to those still playing small. And when people can't match your vibration, they don't confront you. They avoid you. They blame you. They gossip to justify why they walked away. But behind all of that noise is one truth they'll never say out loud. Your spirit saw right through them, and they couldn't handle being seen. Chosen ones carry vision, and vision ruins deception. Your discernment exposed what they tried to hide, and instead of repenting, they ran. And that's okay. Because protection doesn't always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it shows up as exposure, sometimes as betrayal, and sometimes as silence that saves your future. You're not hard to love, you're just hard to fool. And that makes you dangerous to people who rely on manipulation to survive. So of course you'll be alone. Not forever, but for this stretch, yes. Because God's trying to give you something too holy to be shared with unclean hands when you're chosen. Friendships stop being casual. Every connection becomes a covenant or a contamination. There's no in-between. That's why the Spirit guards you. That's why some conversations don't even make it to your ears. Why some people feel intimidated before they even speak to you. They don't know why they're uncomfortable, but their spirit does. Their demons know who you are before your name is even introduced. Your energy speaks louder than your words. You carry divine codes. You're not just walking, you're radiating. And people who don't want healing will never be able to sit peacefully in your presence. That's why peace left when you arrived. That's why they shifted when you entered the room. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your anointing made everything fake feel the heat. Don't apologize for that. Own it. God didn't isolate you to make you weak. He did it to activate your authority. The wilderness didn't break you, it prepared you. The silence wasn't to hurt you, it was to sharpen your ears to the voice of God. Now you're moving different, seeing clearer, hearing stronger, loving smarter, and walking bolder. Because now you understand this was never about having a lot of friends. It was about becoming the friend of God. He stripped the crowd so he could get your attention. He silenced the noise so he could speak destiny into your spirit. He emptied the room so he could fill your soul. And now something new is rising inside of you. Strength you didn't know you had. Peace that doesn't make sense. Confidence that isn't based on who affirms you, but on who assigned you. You're no longer seeking the approval of people who were never called to understand you. You're no longer begging to be accepted by circles you were never meant to stand in. You've stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You've stopped shrinking to fit into places you were anointed to transform. This is your breakthrough season, not because everything feels good, but because everything finally makes sense. The pain had purpose. The silence had a sound. The betrayal had a blessing buried inside. You didn't lose anything. You were being repositioned, and soon people will wonder how you're glowing with no applause, how you're elevating with no visible support, how you're walking in peace when everything around you looks like chaos. It's because they never saw the invisible protection covering you. They don't know about the angels guarding you. They don't know about the prayers that went up in your darkest hour. They don't know about the nights you warred in silence. They don't know the cost, but heaven does, and heaven rewards everything you sacrificed. Every tear you hid, every time you felt invisible, none of it was in vain. God saw it all, and now He's preparing a table. But not just any table. A table in the presence of the same people who counted you out, who left you, who mocked you, who thought you were finished. And you won't even need revenge. You won't need validation. You won't need to explain a thing. Your elevation will be the evidence, because when divine protection is activated, you move in silence, but arrive in glory. You walk through the valley, but come out glowing. You lose people, but gain purpose. You lose comfort, but gain clarity. You lose the crowd, but find your true calling. So if you're still walking alone right now, don't worry. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're being sharpened in secret for a victory in public. And when it happens, when God flips the season and launches you into destiny, every lonely step will make sense. Every goodbye will feel like grace, and every tear will feel like a seed that bloomed into something unstoppable. You're not just chosen, you're guarded. You're not just protected, you're positioned. You're not just different, you're divinely designed. So, keep walking, even if no one's beside you, because every step you take in obedience is echoing through realms unseen, and heaven is watching, and your reward is coming.